now the earth turned actually during our talk, around the around itself, and we have a complete cycle of light and darkness. How was it for you? I would love to hear from Tanvi and Abhishek that experience. I mean, we organized it in very short time. I think it's something like 3 weeks of coming out of this Legal Talk conversation. And it's stunning that it happened. Over 100 people involved. So Abhishek, what's your, you were awake for all the time too, I think, if I'm counted right. So Tanvi too, how was that for you, Abhishek?
Firstly, thank you to everybody who is here. And thank you, Frank, for organizing this, for putting this idea, firstly. It was extraordinary in many, many ways, I have to say. Firstly, to see you being awake for 24 hours on that chair. By the time it was the 5th hour, I was saying that the last session is going to be about Frank sitting on that chair, because that is the most intense thing that would have happened in these 24 hours. But, it also got me thinking that you in your generosity, you were saying that, Abhishek and his team have been awake various nights. And you are doing this now. I felt it much harder to stay awake last night than any of those nights. And that is because in those nights when we would go to sleep, we would think that someone's going to die if I'm not awake.
Yeah.
That was the predominant feeling. And it really was not imaginary. It was a real thing that I felt guilty of sleeping in that period. Because on the phone, there would be a call which would need to be attended in either half an hour or 1 hour, or any time there could be an emergency, and we would just need to attend to it. So the fact that you stayed up all night and to have conversations also, I think, reiterates why these conversations around art and theater are like life and death. And with your own example of being there, I think you have reiterated that in a completely experiential way. I wasn't awake all the time. I slept for a few hours in between, I have to admit. And when I came back, I was so surprised to see you, not only just to see you, but you were so fresh and alert, and you were asking very detailed questions. I'm really stumped by your tenacity and your willpower, and your belief and faith in the theater as something that holds the world. So thank you for that. The other thing I think is this is a huge experience. I think I really need time to process this experience, because it was like a crash course in some kind of global understanding on a crisis which we don't understand in the first place, but also about theater, history, arts, so many things. One would really need to see the recording again, and it has given me a lot to think of. And there are a couple of questions that I think immediately come to my mind. The first question I've been mulling over through the last maybe 8 or 9 sessions is that it seems to me that we are all talking about a change, that there must be a change. We don't know where the change is going to come from, what the change is going to look like. But because this is a man-made, huge political crisis around the world, and we spoke to people in Hungary and in Chile, in Indonesia, we are talking about this crisis in a very positive affirmation of wanting to change. But we have 2 models of revolution at the moment. One comes from the French Revolution, that a lot of people will come to the streets and overthrow the king. And the other is probably the guerrilla revolution, the Che Guevara model, where people are in smaller numbers. And, the French Revolution model has a Gandhian variation where it is peaceful. But this is basically what we have. And maybe I'm thinking these models are not going to help us think about the next revolution, because the next problem is more scattered. It involves technology, it involves various other complicated um, notions of who is the enemy. We don't know. When India was fighting the British, we knew who were we fighting against. Not only did we know who we were fighting against, we also knew those British people who were with us, who were pro-democracy. But today we don't, I think around the world, these 24 hours show us that there is a Narendra Modi in Hungary, there is a Narendra Modi in Chile. There is not one dictator, there are a series of dictators, and there are good people, who believe in these powers. Now, what do we do about that? I think so. That's the first question I'm at least right now walking out with, that what is the other model than the French Revolution model and this model? And the second big question that I've been thinking about through this is that how do we make sure that we are able to have more of such dialogue? And not only when we grow up and we are older and we can sit here, but at the level of school, at the level of university, especially I would say school, because our children everywhere go to schools which are so isolationist. They learn letters and alphabets and numbers, but what we don't teach them is who is this other person. They learn stories about animals, and there is a good fox and a bad fox, but then who is this other? What is the other? And I think this conversation was great to see all the many myths about who is the other. We are so similar in so many ways, which is a sort of truism, but also our differences, our beautiful differences, although most of us are ideologically similar, but there are differences. And I wonder how we can bring this to not something that adults do when they have formed opinions, when we have decided to be theater makers, but is there a version of this that we can do for our children when they're young, when they're 5, 7, 8, 10? Can they meet each other across platforms and have a conversation? I think that would be, in my mind, one of the biggest catalysts for change in the future. What cross connections do they have? So yeah, I think for now, that is what I have to say. And thank you once again to you and all the teams that have worked day and night, the backend teams, the stage management teams. To Tanvi for coming on board. I'm really grateful, Tanvi, that you came on board for this project, and you've done so much work. Thank you very, very much. I mean, of course, it is yours as much as it is anybody else's. And I'm glad that you picked up that phone and you decided to join in always. And last but not the least from my side, I really, really want to thank HowlRound for giving a space. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I'm doing something with HowlRound. And every time, whether it has been online or it has been at Emerson College, it has been a great experience working with HowlRound. And of course, all these participants, every artist who was here, to take out your time at a time of crisis. Many of you were receiving calls from family. You had issues with internet connectivity, and all of you are in a situation where it is stressful. You're trying to survive a crisis, no matter which part of the world you are from. But to stand by what has happened in India and to think of it as a global conversation, which I think is the true spirit of India. The true spirit of India is internationalist. It is global. It is not a narrow nationalism. That is not what India has ever stood for in its history. And I'm very grateful to everyone here to have resounded that and echoed that with their own words and thoughts. Thank you.
Tanvi, how was that for you, that experience?
So I wrote things down because I didn't want to forget anything. And I think similarly to what Abhishek said, it will take some time to really mull over and reflect on what happened because we were just, it felt like a bit of a crash course. And I actually remembered something else that Abhishek taught us when I was studying direction from him in 2017, which is in the first week of our course, I think you asked us to read Hamlet 20 times. And most of us failed. And then you said, at the end of it, you said, I wasn't testing your muscles. This wasn't an endurance test. It's just the work you have to put in. And it, when we were kind of coming into this 24-hour marathon, it felt like the structure was very exciting, and every hour it's like we're clocking down the hour, and we're almost making it sound like an endurance test or a marathon, but really it was the thing that had to be done to get all of these perspectives and all of these voices. So it wasn't a gimmick, it wasn't a trick, it wasn't just a historic format for the sake of it. It was just the amount of time and energy and focus and attention that was needed on a subject like this, and to do it in this way, and I think, Frank, everybody talks about your energy, just your quality of attention has not wavered for 24 hours. And I have this quote by the Argentinian bibliophile Alberto Manguel, who said that the history of literature is not the history of writers, but the history of readers. And we're here now, and we have all these creators who talk about missing their audiences. A lot of them don't have their audiences, and they realize that they are not complete without the community and without their audiences. And I just wanted to first thank all the audiences who showed up across the 24 hours, across time zones. It is amazing, and I feel like we have so much engagement of people who kept coming back. And so thank you for being that audience, because without the reader, there is no history of literature. And also, this kind of event reinforces the need for cultural memory keepers who kind of hold the thread between what has been and what can be. And I think, Frank, you've held that thread for 24 hours and for the past year and a half. So we talk about politicizing memory, but just to be a cultural memory keeper and to treat yourself as such, and therefore put the onus on everybody else to think of themselves as that, I think is a huge responsibility. And in bearing it, you also give it to us. So I thank you for that. As with theatre, I mean, Abhishek was talking about the correlations between relief work and theatre in the beginning, and for me it was just that, as with theatre, so with relief work and community work, both take a village, and I am really, really proud to belong to my village. And to speak of the village, I will mention a few people very quickly and then come back to some things. We have the brilliant operators, mentioned them at the outset, but let's say their names again. We had Rachit Ketan, Jeshron Tao, Kaushiki Gupta, Kritarth Karanjkar from India. We had Travis Emil and Thea Rogers. Thea, of course, who pulled much more than just operating together for us. Thank you, Thea. They were operating for 8 hours each straight. We had Shraddha Raj and Meghna Talang, who were the stage managers and communicating with over 100 artists over the last 24 hours together. Thank you to them. We had Vishwajyoti Ghosh, who did the lead creatives. He is a graphic novelist and has been asking many important questions through the pandemic, and he gave us his time and his energy for this. We have Bindu Malini Narayan Swami and Vasu Dikshit, who created the lovely ditty, which became a really wonderful way of bookending each segment, which was lovely, and they did it in a graceful way that only they could. So thank you for that. And last but not the least, we have Cactus Juice, who have been with me in my study for the last 30 hours, putting up updates, sharing posters, sharing pictures, literally live posting and tweeting this event so that everybody knows what's happening, even if they aren't logged in. Their names are, and I'm hoping they come in now, their names are Elton De Mello, Nihar Nair, and Shannon Fernandez, and they have been a huge support and a huge creative boost in what has been happening. Come on here. There's a bit of a lag by the time it gets to the hall, so they're running right about now. Hi, show your faces.
So you had your apartment was the camp, right?
We're at my study.
Your study.
I've been doing copy. Shannon's been doing creatives. Elton is client manager and has been liaising with everybody. They are brilliant, and they have in a week pulled together an entire social media campaign so that people know about it. So I'm very grateful to all of you. Also, they are great company for 30 hours over such a stressful and chaotic event. So I'm grateful. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Great job, you guys.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the thank yous, but also now just for the artists, to listen to poems by Fez and James Baldwin and Gulzar and Dylan Thomas and Varavara Rao at all hours of the day and night, to hear songs sung by Gundu Raju, who sings about myths, protest songs by Sambhaji Bhagat, and anti-caste peans by M.D. Pallavi. It was a balm and a stimulus, and therefore it was restful and rousing in equal measure. And for all of that and everything else that they have done, we are very grateful. Anurupa said significantly that the losses, of course, everybody spoke about the real losses that they had incurred. Anurupa also spoke about the intangible losses, and I thought that was really important to mention, the intangible losses to heritage and to history. And I feel like what this event has done for me personally is to talk about those erasures as an act of cruelty as well. So as we eliminate people and as we eliminate their narratives, to kind of bring that into perspective, that was really important. And finally, Maud Mitchell said that grief is elliptical. By that, I understood that grief isn't linear, it comes in waves. So we repress, we forget, we move on, we get on with it, we work, we do something else, we occupy ourselves. But grief is elliptical. So the idea of theatre makers holding grief and doing something with it and being a repository or a space that can hold it collectively. Frank, you often spoke about the horrors that you heard being biblical, and while you were thinking that, at the same time I was thinking about just ancient Greek theatres and what they stood for when it comes to democracy and citizenship and catharsis. So the last 24 hours really have felt, well, it's not entirely a release because there is much more work to be done. But Anurupa said that these are the whispered narratives. I will differ. I do not believe there can be whispered narratives over 24 hours of such colossal energy. I feel like they were more like barbaric yawps over the rooftops of 30 countries. So for that and for everything else, I'm very, very grateful. Thank you for having me.
I also think it was impressive. I think about Basil Jones said, that they felt that there's a moment asked for a big, outstanding effort from artists. And he created that gigantic Amal, the puppet, that is walking through Europe, which is also a durational performance. But I felt even in that smaller, but still big way, what we did here was a big, courageous thing. We also risky, that this worked technically so very well, that we got everything out. Tanvi, it has a lot to do with you, your energy, your dedication, and also your vision, that this is of importance. And I think this was also an extraordinary, lucky choice that we were able to make following Abhishek. I think I know someone. He said, I remember the early talk, he said, this is not going to be easy, but I know someone who could really help us. So after all, it is about people, and that's what we learned in these talks. And Thomas Oberender, who at the end also said, it's not so much about nations, but let's think about networks run by people and personal change. He gave up his job, but we heard so many inspiring things, to what Rachel said when she said, in time of sickness, an old, hundreds of years old saying, in times of sickness, you can be at home, but the intention has to be right. And I think this is what Tanvi also said. Our intention, I think, was right. And Abhishek, I really hope, and that is my hope, that you feel that you were not alone in this. And I think also India and also the artists, also the people who did this tremendous effort, that there is a community watching, that there is a sharing of suffering, and that we see each other. And I think that was something that is important to me. And I think also it was interesting, it was about theater, why we do it, how we do it, and also to learn about the big traditions of India in such a massive, long lecture, durational lecture is kind of truly stunning. And I now feel much more connected and know so much more. And I am grateful to these artists, such great artists, so all of them, but many of them, especially also the international ones who joined and took their time out. I thought it was astonishing. I think it was a tribute, I think, to the spirit that we do need, and perhaps that is part of the change. You know, that we did something and created it, made it really happen, and that is in itself, I think, a great. I'm going to think about lots of things that you know were said, and I feel that I wrote here also something down. But today is today, and I'm glad it's today. You know that one of the sayings, and I'm glad that today is today, that we have that with us as a memory of that time. And also a response, I think, that perhaps tries at least to match the magnitude of what we are going through. My question would be also for you, Abhishek. In a way, one could also say, you know, this was a long performance. We called in actors; they performed themselves. You know, they were the experts, like Rimini Protocol, who said we speak with the people of the everyday. Did you have a feeling, Abhishek, and also you, Tanvi, that actually this was a way of doing theater, a way of doing transfer knowledge, of creating community and bringing people together?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt so. This is, I think that was at the heart of this event right from the beginning, from the time we started talking about it. At the end of our last Seagull talk, Frank, when you were also talking about it, definitely it was about all the things that one thinks of in the theater, and also about being live. I think that's quite extraordinary, because you know we had this incredible backstage team which pulled together one of the biggest sort of backstage operations I can think of, where so many people from different countries have to log in, and and it went so smoothly. So I think I do think this was a way of making theater, because it involved risk, and that is critical to, I think, making theater. That and I think one of the reasons why we keep talking about liveness as something which is intrinsic to performance is because we miss the risk in recorded mediums, and there is something intrinsic to risk which makes us powerful. The fact that every evening in the theater we overcome a risk, when we step out of the theater and go back home, we feel more empowered, because we together as a community ended up doing something magical, which was, I mean, 5 people in a circle can't clap at the same time. We can't even clap at the same time. And we do 3.5-hour plays, and with everybody breathing at the same time. It's the magic of liveness and the risk of that which makes us feel empowered. And I think that is what happened in these 24 hours. So in my mind, this was one of the most interesting and exciting performances I could be part of. Yeah. So once again, thank you.
Yeah, and we heard from, Thailand, just what happened last night from Chile, we got an update from Kashmir region, I mean, it was kind of stunning, the Hungarian contributions from Switzerland, Kenya. And so in a way, it was truly a global event in that sense, that also was listening to the voices, I think. And I wish we had better answers. We don't have them, but it was certainly a research in a way of archiving also the presence, of trying to catch something of the moment. And we would do it in months from now, 3 or 5, it would be very much different. Question to Tanvi and Abhishek, the selection of Indian artists, I don't know, did you know them all personally? Did you see some of them for the first time? How was it hearing from your own artists, you know, through that kind of little detour of a global conversation?
I didn't know them all. I saw many of them for the first time on video. And a lot of the conversations had been on call and on message for the last few weeks. Some, of course, I had prior relationships with, but many of them, and definitely not in this kind of capacity. So I think linguistic diversity, I also, you were incredible also at pulling together a conversation which had about 8 to 9 languages in it. So thank you, Frank, for creating a space for that. This could have very easily been just an English conversation, but it wasn't, and I think it was richer for it.
Yeah.
So I think linguistic diversity was a really big one. The fact also that we had so many young people, and not just the old hands and the known established veterans, but also people who are doing compelling work and, you know, are not quote unquote accomplished. So I feel like a lot of that, along with geographical diversity and where people were coming in from, and the lived realities of their theatre practices, whether it was urban or semi-urban or rural, or especially in the last 1 year, depending on their state and how badly it was affected by the pandemic and what that did to their theatre. So I think also kind of pulling back into what Abhishek was saying about theatre makers being identifiable by their integrity. I feel like maybe it wasn't a conscious choice, but I feel like each of these individuals had a tremendous amount of integrity and empathy and observation. All of these three things came up multiple times in what is a theatre maker and what is the role of a theatre maker: to be empathetic, to be compassionate, and to have integrity. And I think each of these speakers from India and from across the world really did that.
Yeah.
I also just want to add that, you know, to remember that there are many, many, many artists in India and abroad who could have very well been part of this lineup, and who were not, for the reasons of time and, you know, for us having to look at a certain specific kind of curation. But this event is really about all these theatre makers. And I think the great thing about the theatre is, I often say this to people, that if you watch someone's play, you're watching my play. We are present in each other's work. We are present in each other's consciousness. We read each other's books. We are interested in that. So I also want to take a moment to just remember and all those people who made this conversation possible through their words and through their ideas, but they were not part of this directly.
Yeah. My question for you, Abhishek, would be when you were sitting there night after night, saving lives, actually, really saving lives. Did you feel it was an artistic practice, or did you say, I'm now here as a human being? So how was that in your head? Or did you say, if I am an artist, in that James Baldwin sense, you know, that is natural, I should be doing that? Or did you feel it was separate from the artistic practice?
That's a hard question, Frank, at the end of 24 hours. I wish you had asked me this in the beginning. I think on one hand, my artistic practice is very much enmeshed in my life. It's not very separate, although I keep separate time for it. But I do think that this made me more of, it definitely helped me think more deeply about various things, which is what I think makes an artist an artist. So in that sense, it wasn't separate. And now when I look back at it, it doesn't seem separate. But at that time, like I was telling you in the last Seagull talk, I was reading Coast of Utopia by Tom Stoppard, and you know, it saw me through a lot of that period, because I was very interested in that debate which was going on in this play about what is an artist. I mean, are you an artist if you are, you know, in a circle of writers and creating ideas, or are you an artist if you are writing against the Tsar? And you know, nobody really gets to read your work, but at the same time, people line up to get whatever they can because it seems like that is important. And I think in that sense, that play really helped me. Those three plays helped me move through this and keep reiterating for myself that being an artist does not mean always being in rehearsal or being able to, have a poster or have a gig. It is about how, how do I feed my daughter? What's the quality of the time between us when I'm feeding her food? She appears on all talks. I think she's appeared many times here as well.
Yeah.
She's so used to meeting theater people. It's like it's part of her life. She just walks in and waves at theater people and she walks. It's just who she is now, So I don't think there is a very strict separation, but I have to say that there were nights when I felt quite frustrated at not being able to make any art. I thought I was not making any art because I was just doing this. And I would share songs late night on Facebook to all the volunteers, and many volunteers would listen to them who were awake in different parts of the country. They were just to see us through the night. And one of our musicians, Bindu Malini, who has composed the music for this this program as well, she used to have these 15-minute listening sessions where it was her politics. She wanted people to come and listen to, have this space where they could silently listen to her sing. And she sang for volunteers. I was never part of that, but I know her very well. So I know that she was doing that. What I'm trying to say is that each artist also had a very different approach to how to look at this crisis, what would be their role. So I don't think at that time I was aware of it, but now I think it was very much a part of the artistic practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe that is one of the big lessons, that a social engagement is part of an artistic practice. Maybe has to be now of significance, of importance, that it cannot be isolated or separate anymore, at least for the time being. And even so, at the coast, we say art should be useless, you should be art for art's sake, but perhaps now it is also a time to start making sense. I don't know who said that. I think Anne Bogart, the deconstructing, which was for her generation also, and for mine in a way, so fascinating, the idea of, the splinters, of something that is more interesting when the structure is no longer intact, but you see and remodel the part of the structures, because then you see what made it up. And that she said, perhaps it's time to tell the stories, perhaps it's time to tell the tales, of the Mahabharata and from the Greeks, and reinterpret them, not leaving them, to a right-wing interpretations or biblical stories, and have new interpretation that have something to say. I mean, it was such a big variety of opinions and thoughts and possibilities. And I liked it for it. It was contradicting each other, and it was reaffirming. And but what was shining through was the solidarity, I think, with India, with Indian artists, and the horror of the suffering. That not only the virus in a way is senseless, it's not God sent, or it's not the earth now cursing you, but it's something that did happen in nature, but it is something that could have been prevented, should have been prevented, and or better put into place. And we can only hope, as we said so often, that perhaps this is a wake-up call for things to come. Tanvi, when you called everybody up from India, how was the interest of the artists? Did you have to convince them? Were they happy to share, to come? And what was the response from the Indian artists, to be asked, if I understand right, also for the first time, like 40, 50 Indian theater artists in one event is online. That's quite unusual.
Most of them, in fact, all of them, with the exception of two, and the two of them had very good reasons that were personal and to do with COVID. All of them said yes immediately, and it was spoken of as a matter of honor.
Mm-hmm.
to be part of a conversation that was so much bigger than individual concerns, but to be able to kind of map what a personal and collective experience, like a personal and political collective experience could potentially look like, and then to make sense of it and contextualize how we relate to one another. So I think that everybody could immediately see that it was very specific because it was about them and their work and what the last year has been for them, and they were part of like a much bigger piece. So I think it's been really positive, and I know that everybody's thrilled. But Frank, I have one question for you, and then I know we have a curtain call. Many questions for you, but one is, what surprised you? Did anything surprise you? Because I know we were prepared for a bunch of technical surprises, and we only ever spoke about them in that way. But did anything stand out to you, or did anything shift for you?
Well, what surprised me was that it ran so smoothless. In a way, it seemed effortless. You know, the transitions, people coming in and out. It's a highly complex, and anybody who works, you know, nowadays on Zoom, just to get 4 or 5 people together is already not easy. It was quite stunning, the ease with everybody like using that medium, but also that technically that it did work. HowlRound could do it. HowlRound said they had never done it yet. It was probably one of the biggest platforms in that sense in the theater, at least in the US. And so that was surprising. I was surprised that my interest to really listen, you know, did not go down in a way. You know, I really thought, oh my God, it will be, what did I do? You know, last night I thought, I hope I will not fall asleep or something, say something true. But no, it was surprising that each hour brought something new and nourishing and set energy free. I was surprised by the variety of voices, from the puppet player, from the singer, from the street performers, and the farmer. You know, it was so touching. Who said we produce is a small village and we produce vegetables, but we are performers. We make theater. Quite unthinkable if you go to France or Germany or England. You know that a farmer would really say, yeah, we also performers, and we to theaters. And when I said to her, well, where do you go for the performances? Where do you show it? And someone, I think the translator said, Frank, she just performs in her village. It's impossible to get somewhere else. This is, you know, she doesn't tour, you know, she does it in her village, right? If I understood right, that's for her community. And she's a farmer and she enjoys and practices her art. And I saw how beautiful that really is. I never thought that this is possible in that sense, or in a way. And to hear the seriousness of everybody. I think, especially the Indian artists who wanted to tell something and also wanted us to listen, I feel, and so that the level of attention of the intent, that surprised me, and that it was sustained after such a long time.
On that note, I think we've opened it up for our curtain call.
Wow, look at this. Wow, that is, oh my God, this is so incredible to see. So how do we do that? Do we open up the conversation, or is it a town hall meeting? What do we do, Tanvi?
It would be nice for people to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah, so whoever wants to say something, unmute and...
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Frank and Tanvi and Abhishek and the entire team for this amazing effort that you made and which allowed us all to be here. I just wanted to share something. It's something very sad and also it talks about connection, Frank. I just spoke to Daniel a little while back, telling him about this curtain call. So he told me that he lost his mother today morning. And at the time when we were doing the session, it happened, and he shared a very strange moment. He said that when the song was happening, the time was around that time. So he said that it gave him some sort of a feeling of connection, and also gave him strength that we were all together at that moment. So I just wanted to share it on his behalf. I'm very sorry for him, but yeah.
Incredible.
He'll be traveling, so he probably may not be able to join now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just press the button. Whoever maybe wants to share something. How was that for you all? How did it feel to participate?
Well, it was very nice. I just want to say thank you to Frank. So, you not only for this particular 24 hours, but for everything you've done over the past year. You're kind of the performance lifesaver for us all, with incredible energy and goodwill. So often we have great energy and bad will, and sometimes we have goodwill and low energy. And you combine terrific compassion and goodwill with high energy. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much.
And of course, to all the participants as well, who have joined us.
May I make a comment, Frank?
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to you. I think from the very beginning of the Seagull Talks, and certainly specifically in this 24-hour period, a sense of community, because we've all lived wherever we are in the world, lockdown and isolation and lack of contact, and this sense of community and also just caring about other people, which can manifest itself in so many different ways. And I was just worrying when you're going to get some sleep, but I assume you will take care of that.
Yeah.
And it was a quite remarkable, an extraordinary feat of organization and logistics. So your team is phenomenal as well. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to participate with others.
Well, if I may share something. First of all, Frank, your patience, your endurance, your attention and perseverance is quite infectious. I have been able to watch most of part of the marathon. I mean, bearing 4 hours of sleep, but I've been able to catch up most of the conversations. Surjit and I was having a conversation the other night, and we went through our situation in Manipur and how freelance artists like us really don't have a space right now, because it's really the reason is more about classical and folk. So new people who come up with new creations really don't have space yet. And I'm planning to go back to Manipur in August. And Surjit and I were talking about it. How do we go here? We really don't have any support. We don't have a community. But candidly speaking, after being on this marathon, suddenly I feel that, okay, we are not alone. We are part of a community, and the community is huge and is there everywhere. So thank you so much for having us on board and hearing our story. Thank you.
Yeah. And I really, again, I also would like to say that again. I mean, it was really inspired by Abhishek, the incredible work he did, staying up night after night after night. And I said it in between, but also then he said, you know, after I'm going to hang up with you, and it was already 1 o'clock. He said, we're going to call 114 people, and they need us. They might die, and some actually did die and will die. And that he showed that compassion, and that's at least what we could do is try to imagine how it is. And someone said that one of the artists said, you know, not only should you imagine, you know, how is it to walk in someone else's shoes, but take off your own shoe first, you know, and then walk in the shoes. And we don't do that. And I think Abhishek learned that from our talk, and what you did, the compassion, what you showed, it's so remarkable. And there was really something also, I think, giving back, you know, and you stand and your team, everybody really for the very best, I think, of the theater world and the performance world and the ideals and visions we have. And you really also made that. And it was so touching. And as someone also just now said, I'm proud to be a part of such a group, a compassionate one that actually is the one who raises when the times get tough, the tough get going, you know. And I think Abhishek, you did that, Tanvi, Anurupa, and so it is also really for you guys and for everybody in the world who made such a difference.
Hey, Frank, Terence here from Kuala Lumpur. How you doing?
Well, I'm surprised. I thought it would be, I didn't really know what it was. A risk, as the entire thing was a risk to organize something like this. Hasn't been done as we knew. HowlRound has never done it. The number of artists involved, over 100 in a kind of a short time. The format of, you know, half Indian artists, half global artists. So I kept me awake. I'm surprised by that, as I'm energized by it. And there are mornings in this time of Corona where I woke up much more tired than I'm now.
Just a little bit something reflective. It's first of all, a great thank you to you and your team. And I was just thinking about it today. As I told you, Kuala Lumpur was back in a lockdown. And I was just thinking about it, like we have all come together, and over the last 1.5 years, I don't think I've made any new friends or met anyone who I've not spoken to before. And because I'm so used to traveling, just before the lockdown, we had just come back from a show in New York, and we straight went into a lockdown. And I've not left the country since. And it's so great, and I must thank to the Siegel Center and everybody here that I got to meet and speak to artists all over the world, and it feels good again. And I hope it's the same feeling for everyone, because it's great to connect. Because I think the thing I've taken for granted is before this, we could just hop on a flight with all these low budget flights and head off somewhere in Asia. And now with the lockdown, I can't even go more than 10 kilometers from my house. So this is something which I truly have learned to appreciate in this time. And yeah, thanks to you and your team, Frank. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, really. Thank you all. And also for like Maud, you know, you were so honest when you talked about, you know, your loss. And I remember the talk with Lee and you, and I told you that I felt almost guilty, you know, that I felt I didn't raise to the occasion. I didn't know that it would be his last public interview, and I should have asked, you know, maybe other things. Even so, I think it was an honest and a deep conversation we had, but it really did show, yes, things do come to an end, do happen, so it was very moving for me that you rejoined us and shared with us, you know, that moment or moment of your life.
I'm sorry, I'm a lot distracting because at this moment, it seems like the whole career that I have is kind of in front of me, because I see so many people that some I really was inspired to start my work with, and some people whom I had to read or get in touch with when I was, as I am going through my journey, and so many people with whom I worked in different parts in my journey. Some of my teachers are here, and it's just just I'm just super stoked to seeing this thing that everybody is here. Like I at least have 15 people that I worked with who are here at some point. Thank you for having me, because this is also a very different feeling, because I'm just going from this page to the other page to see everybody's face constantly, and I'm just going through, oh, he's there, oh, she's there, oh my god, yes, I have to call her, I have to call him. Pradeep Dada is laughing, like yeah, it's like it's amazing. It's amazing, really. Thank you for having it for many different reasons for everybody, but for me at this moment, it couldn't be better than this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say something, guys?
Yeah.
Can I speak? Right. You know, what Titas just said, I mean, it just, you know, I just felt that it was something perhaps that I was feeling just by myself. But, you know, over the last 24 hours, there have been fairly emotionally difficult conversations, some very complex conversations, deep thoughts. But interestingly, what one comes out of this entire experience is with a sense of joyousness. There is a feeling of, you know, time well spent, people well met. And I think that is something that is going to stay with a lot of us who've sort of been on this journey for 24 hours. And I think there's no better way to look towards the future than to do it with this spirit and with a sense of comradeship, and that, you know, what she just said, that we are part of a much larger community, and it's tangible, and most important is joyous. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And what a great diverse group. Everybody talks about it, but this is as diverse as it gets, right?
If I may.
Yeah.
Just the most fascinating part for me of this entire experience has been how, while staying true to very individualistic experiences that all of us have had as artists across the globe, we still found such solidarity and relatability in the experiences of every other artist. And it's not just across different countries, but within India. India being such a large, diverse country, we heard about the migrant crisis. We heard about the different kinds of experiences and risks that communities were facing across the country. But even in India as artists, we did not have a forum or a space to actually see all of that put together in one room in front of us. And all of that really contextualizes the impact of COVID on the arts community in this country, and as well as in comparison and in reference to countries around India. And that is an overwhelming realization for me personally, at least. Just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you very much.
Is anybody from HowlRound there? Is Sia there? Or maybe join us if you are.
May I say something, Frank?
Yes.
So thank you. And thank you, Abhishek and Tanvi. This has been an incredible event. And it's been both inspiring and sobering and incredible to hear so many different Indian artists speak about what they've been doing. And it's just, you know, what I said earlier was the artists and scholars of art, of theater, performance, really are their own ecosystem. And as such, I think a very powerful group of people across different countries, albeit with different circumstances. But this has made that, you know, exceptionally clear. And Frank, you've done yeoman's service to the profession with these talks. It's just been so incredible. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank and team. I have to run right now, but it was lovely to be part of this. A big hug to all my Indian friends and colleagues, and to everyone around the globe. Moments like these are very special, and people like you, Frank, and your team made it possible. So my gratitude and my admiration to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wish to express my gratitude to Frank, to Abhishek, to HowlRound, and of course to all of you, the theater people from all over the world, wherever you are, for the last 24 hours of all those insightful conversations and beautiful readings and brilliant short performances. I've been following this live stream this whole day. You know, last time I experienced a 24-hour thing is watching Mount Olympus, but today it's totally worthy. Yeah, I mean it. And this marathon, I think, has turned the internet and that's the whole world into a theater, where we can provide our ideas or concepts and also information to help whoever in need to overcome their hardship. So this is a huge achievement. So thank you.
I just want to say one thing which I found extremely interesting in these talks, apart from all of us, you know, being in the same room virtually, is that how interesting this is, that while a health crisis is bringing us together in this platform, but also the crisis of democracy, which is there in so many other countries. I heard so many people using the term like our fascist government. You know, there were people from outside India who were talking about our, you know, prime minister, and how these connections are not only, you know, these joys, as Sunil is saying, connections are only because we are in some kind of a health crisis and the body is absent from the stage and so on and so forth, but also, you know, the conversations about pockets of resistance which are there in different parts of the world. And actually that is also something that is bringing us together, through which we can also hope for another, these the resistance movements that are brewing in different parts of the world. So I thought that it's not only the health crisis, but the crisis of the constitution of democracy, which is also bringing us together to have these conversations. I thought it was very, very interesting and very, very well put by all the speakers. And thank you very much to Frank, to Tanvi, to Abhishek for having us. It's been incredible, 24 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. One wonders if it's possible to think that all the Indian artists in a way get together, create some kind of a loose theater organization, because you all spoke regionally how complicated it is, that it's overlooked, that perhaps, you know, if there is some kind of a loose coalition, you know, that might be something that the state might be easier to convince to talk to, you know.
Hi, I am Dakshin and he's Atish, and we both wants to say thank you so much, Tanvi, Frank, and entire team for calling these people, because we have been working tirelessly since many months, and this has actually, I mean, this entire gathering realizes that we are not alone. I mean, there are so many people who are working, you know, in their own capacity. And thank you very much, Frank. I think your question to every participant, that how this pandemic affected you emotionally and politically. In India, the political spaces, you know, the discourse of the political discussion, that is shrinking. There are no spaces for the political discussion. I think yesterday we had very open political discussion, what we are going through, and, you know, who is responsible and what is happening actually during this pandemic. So thank you very much for creating this platform. We are really grateful to be part of this entire discourse.
Thank you.
thank you to everybody who organized this, Tanvi, Abhishek, and thank you to Frank for your crazy stamina and energy. I don't know how you stayed attentive through the whole thing and was so present with us and very kind.